Let's go, GM, Algo fam, welcome back to day 2 here at Decipher. All right, my voice is a little bit not as good as it was yesterday. Can understand meeting so many great people here. The connections have been awesome. I'm glad you're all here. I'm glad you're joining us on the live stream. I know you just got done listening to Sean Ford, our CEO, speaking of what an inspirational talk he had. I mean, LFG guys, come on now. This is our time. We are here to build, and that is what today in the greenhouse is all about. So yesterday, we heard from a lot of my colleagues. Paul Riegel, he was in here talking about his 3 core pillars, right? The core protocol, interoperability, and programmability. So yesterday, what we saw was really all about the what and the why would you want to build on top of Algorand. And today, it's all about you, the devs, and the how. So what we're going to go through today, I'll kick it off, right? All right, hey, LFG devs, we're going to figure out how easy it is to set up your developer environment. I'll walk through that this morning. After that, we are going to have a bunch of my colleagues here within the engineering team as well as the DevRel team. They're going to go through and introduce the various languages that we have available in the Algorand ecosystem for building smart contracts. First, we're going to go through PyTeal, then we're going to take a look at the Beaker framework, and then we're also going to learn about Reach as well. So whether or not you are a Python developer or a JavaScript developer, we've got languages to meet you where you are. We've got all the SDKs and stuff. We're going to figure out how to get it set up. We're going to figure out how easy it is to actually write and to begin building. Over the lunch period, we've got the scale competition. So we're going to hear from builders who are in the early stages and trying to scale their projects. After lunch, we're going to come back and we are actually going to build some smart contracts. So we're going to build the same dApp. We're going to build an auction dApp, and we're going to do that using the Beaker framework in Python, and we're also going to use the Reachlang. And so we invite you to stick around all day. We got great content all day long. Let's see what the next slide is. Hey, that's me right there. Our first speaker today is me. All right. All right, here we go. So LFG devs, let's go. All right. I'm going to teach you how to launch your Algorand developer environment today. Hello, I am Ryan Fox. I am a developer advocate here at Algorand. I'm joined by many of my colleagues here in this room, as well as online in that Discord server. So we thank everybody on this team for coming together and being available for the devs out there. That's me a few years ago, so that's how it started. All right, so that was me when I was working for a mortgage banker. I was doing that by day, and at night I was mining Bitcoin, and that was back in 2013. And I guess how it's going? Well, as you can see, yes, I'm fully Web3. There's my Decipher Gator from last year. All right, welcome everybody. I hope that we can connect. I'd like you to connect with me using that Bird app. That's probably the best thing. You can reach me. I am Ryan R. Fox, as well as I want to make sure that you connect with the @AlgoDevs Twitter handle as well. We're here. We send out all sorts of updates whenever we are making new releases, and we got all sorts of good things. So make sure you're doing that. Let's connect. And why the heck are we here? Well, we're here to build. And if you're new to Web3, we spelled things a little bit funny. So yeah, that's build. But we're here to build. And this talk is really all for you, the devs. And the first thing that we're going to do is talk to you about how to set up your developer environment to begin your journey to become an AlgoDev. So I want you to build smart contracts, dApps, DeFi protocols. I want you to build provably fair games. I want you to build smart NFTs. I want you to move beyond just the basic JPEG art towards mutable attributes that are enforceable, that have enforceable royalties for creators. And I want to increase the utility for those end users and the collectors. I want you to use our verifiable random functions within your Algorand smart contracts. I want you to build oracles. I want you to bring oracles so that you can then use that in other smart contracts. I want you to build bridges, and I want you to build trust minimized bridges using our decentralized layer 1 protocol for building for using our state proofs technology that you heard a little bit yesterday, Chris Piker talking about. And I also want you to build bridges amongst yourself. That's why we're here at Decipher, and that's what the AlgoFam is. It's about building bridges to other developers as well within this community, and that is what the AlgoFam is, and that's what it means to be a developer here in the AlgoFam, is community. So thank you for being here, and I want you to become a Web3 developer, because in short, what I want you to build is the future of Web3, and you can do that here on Algorand. I want you to build it on Algorand. I want to welcome everybody here to the AlgoFam, and I want to convert all of you into becoming AlgoDevs. Let me show you what it takes to do it. This is where we start, right here. Every successful AlgoDev has started right here. File, new, WTF. All right? Trust me, we can get beyond this, and we can figure out how to get to done. We're going to start building the Web3 future from right here. My recommendation is for you to start using VS Code. I think this is a great tool. It's free, open source software. You can install it on any of these various platforms, so wherever you're at, on any platform, click download it, install, and then we want you to search within the extensions portion, and you search for Algorand, and you're going to see a couple of different extensions that are there. One is for Algorand, one is for Reach. Install them both. All right, that's easy. It adds syntax highlighting for PyTeal, and the Reach lang. And I think that this is a really great IDE for most devs who are getting started, and especially these extensions make it very helpful for the AlgoDevs. All right, so let's get familiar with what that Algorand, or the components of the Algorand developer environment. Basically, we'll break it down into 3 different components here. We've got infrastructure, SDKs, and languages and frameworks. All right, so the first component we're going to talk about is the infrastructure. That is a tool that we call Sandbox. And what this is it's all your infrastructure bits, right? So this is about building the local development environment for you, all within this containerized environment. And then we have all sorts of SDKs available for you here. So wherever you're at, we've got SDKs to meet you where you are. Come on and pick one of those, and then come and pick a language, and perhaps a framework as well to go with that. So we'll take a look at all of these components here and get them installed on your local environment. If you are here in this room and you are following along, get ready. We've got lots of QR codes you've already seen. You can scan them, you can get them going. If you've got any problems installing anything, you just find the guys in the back of the room there. The DevRel team are back there, and they will help you, or just put your hand in the air and they'll come to you, all right? We're going to get this thing set up now because it's going to be what you're going to use for the rest of the day today as we build out the rest of these solutions today. All right. So, I know, first thing in the morning, what should we do? We should do a little developer calisthenics. So, hands in the air. All right, good. All right, hands down. So, who am I? I want to know, are you a PC? Do you identify as a PC? All right, hands down. Do you identify as a Mac? All right, hands down. And then, do you identify as a Linux? All right, that's pretty well split between everybody, I will have you know. So, good news, like we've got you covered wherever you are. All right, so let's just go through and talk about the basics. What are the prerequisites to get your developer environment set up to work with Algorand? So if you identify as a Mac, you've got just 2 prerequisites that you got to consider here. You're going to need Docker Desktop at version 4.8 or higher, and you're also going to need Python at 3.10 or higher. Now, if you identify as a Windows or a PC, you've got one additional prerequisite, and that is WSL2. So, yes, and my recommendation would be, if you are on the Windows, use the latest version. It does not work on WSL1, so you would have to make an upgrade if you're there. Love to have you, love to help you with that. All right, so let's start right there. WSL2, we will follow some instructions that Microsoft provide. This is a non-trivial task, I will tell you, and we get some people who get hung up right here with WSL2. Again, if you have any struggles with this part, reach out in our Discord server. That's discord.gg/Algorand. We're there to help you get your dev environment set up for you. It starts right here on the Windows platform, WSL2. It's actually pretty easy if you got, especially if you got a brand new workstation. You just go WSL-install. All right? Doesn't take too long, actually. What's going to happen is it's going to download the bits to install a virtual environment. By default, it will install Ubuntu. That's my recommendation. Just take all the defaults there. A few minutes later, you're going to have this nice message down at the very bottom. The requested operation was successful. You now have a virtual machine, Ubuntu, loaded on your Windows platform. You're really not going to see it when you're developing, but it's just there. It's a hook so that we have, so that we can interface with Docker. We'll talk about that in a moment. So, after you get WSL installed, you need to reboot Windows, and then you are going to actually start this Ubuntu the first time because it needs you to configure it by putting in your username and password the very first time. It doesn't have to match what your Windows password is. You can make it whatever you want, but it will prompt you to do that. When you are done with that, this is what you'll have. You'll have this nice command line that just says username at hostname. Cool, okay, great. So you're done. So WSL2 is now installed on your machine. You can close that window. You're not really going to use it anymore. The next thing you need to do is have Git installed. And if you're, again, on a brand new PC, you will need to install this because it's not installed by default. So return back to your IDE. Here we're looking at Visual Studio again. And just hit New Terminal. The command prompt here, this is PowerShell. The terminal that it opens by default is PowerShell. So you can issue a command that is no, it's not wget. What is it? Back up. It is winget install, and then you are installing the Git. And this will run quickly. As you see here is the output, right? So now what you will need to do is within your PowerShell terminal, you will type another command. I'm sorry, you're going to come over here and hit the little plus button so that you can change your default terminal from PowerShell to Git Bash. All right, so you click on Git Bash, and you will get a new window that looks just like this, or a new prompt that looks like this. And now we've got the little $sign here. So now we are actually using a different Bash shell, so that now we can do commands for this in Bash. All right, this is okay. You're ready to go. Right, next thing. So we're done with Git, and we're done with Ubuntu and WSL. Now, everybody is going to do this part here, regardless of if you are a PC, a Mac, or on Linux, which is to install Docker Desktop, because we are trying to get to Docker Compose, which is one of the prerequisites for the Sandbox tool that we're going to use here. So head over to docker.com, you click on the icon of your choosing that matches your environment, and it downloads. Again, this is not, that is not too difficult. Next thing you're going to do is head over to python.org, and you are going to download, recommended, the latest version of Python at the time. It is currently 3.11. That is greater than the minimum requirement of 3.10. Go ahead and install that. If you already have a Python environment installed, you will need to make it at least 3.10 in order to work with our tooling. Once you have that installed, you can now verify your prerequisites. And you can actually do that. You can actually start here. If you already have, if you're already a dev and you've got a developer environment set up, you can check if you're ready to go by just typing these two commands, which would be Python -- version as well as Docker compose version, and verify that these are above the minimum requirements. There we are. As we can see here, I've got 3.10 installed on this one, and I've got Docker compose 2.12, so I'm good to go. All right, so let's now install the infrastructure tools that we want. So we're going to walk through these three different components here, infrastructure pieces. Tool is called Sandbox. All right, and where do we go to get it? Well, it's pretty easy. You're going to return back to your IDE. Make sure that you are opening up Git Bash if you are on Windows, or if you're on Mac or Linux. By default, you'll just get Bash here. So all you have to do is issue the command git clone, and then the repository on GitHub is Algorand Sandbox. All right, so quickly it will download that repository, and you can simply change directory into Sandbox, and then let's take a fast way to create and configure an Algorand developer environment that includes AlgoD node and the indexer as well. That this is recommended only for development environments, and it is not meant to be a tool to use in production. But this is going to get us going quickly and bootstrap our development. So what is Sandbox? What are the components of Sandbox? There are these four components here. So Sandbox is actually a Docker container, right? So that's why we had to install these the virtual environment to make sure that we could get this container there. So it explodes out and it provides these four components. It provides networks. And what I mean by networks is you can deploy, and we recommend that you deploy it as a local private network that only exists on this network. It can be configured as well to connect to the public testnet, and could actually connect to the public mainnet as well. So as you advance your smart contract code and you deploy it and test it locally, you can then change the configuration of Sandbox to connect to the test network, deploy and test your code there, and then finally reconfigure Sandbox to connect to the mainnet and deploy it there finally. So network in parentheses, networks. All right. It also has a built-in wallet or a key manager. This is called KMD, the key management daemon. So that'll manage all of your accounts, and by default, if you're running the local environment, it'll set up a handful of accounts for you, and they'll all be pre-funded. If you're going to connect to any of the public networks, you will, on the testnet side of things, you can use a dispenser in order to fund those accounts, or if you're on mainnet, you will have to import accounts in there and have those funded with real money. All right. There is also a query tool. This is the indexer. If you are building, again, the local private network, the indexer is installed by default. If you are installing it connected to one of the public networks, it is not installed because it can't sync this, but it can start from default, which is, it can start from the genesis, which is what we will do by default when we are creating our private network. So query tool, very helpful. And then lastly are APIs for each of those three things in order for your code, in order to query and get data and push data to the network and to those other infrastructure pieces there. All right, so the APIs are provided on these ports by default. You can change these if you want, but if you're using the other tooling that we're going to take a look at, when you are configuring your clients, it will by default look for the AlgoD node, the networks, on port 4001, the wallet, or KMD, that'll be on 4002, and then the indexer, or that query tool, will be on port 8980 of localhost. That's Sandbox. That's all the infrastructure kit right there. All right, so we saw how to install it. How do we run it? Pretty easy. We just issue the command sandbox up. The recommendation is to give it the keyword dev, which will load the developer configuration. It will start as a local private network. The indexer will be there, and it will also put it in dev mode, which means that every time that you issue a transaction, it will then commit that transaction and to the blockchain, and so you can go very, very quickly. You don't even have to wait the very fast that we have anyway. 3.7 seconds for your transactions. They will just instantly be committed. So we recommend, again, Sandbox up dev. All right, so what do? Head back to your IDE. You've got your terminal open. Again, if you're on Windows, make sure it's git bash and not PowerShell, and then you can issue your command sandbox up dev here. And I like to add the little flag there, -v, which is verbose. And what you'll get is a bunch of output here. What it's doing is it's connecting and downloading the sandbox environment, which in and of itself goes and downloads the latest binaries for that are released by Algorand, and takes them, builds them if necessary, and then ultimately, a few minutes later, you're going to have this output here, which shows that the sandbox successfully started. Now, at the beginning, or kind of at the top of this section here, we have 3 different accounts. So starting in dev mode, you automatically get 3 accounts by default. These are funded, so algos are already in these 3 accounts. And these are stored within the wallet software, the KMD. And the next 2 lines down here are a couple of command line, they're commands at the command line that you could copy and paste and actually run here at the command line to create your very first transaction to transfer algos between account number 1 and account number 2. So you could see that. And then the last line down there is using curl, which is asking for data from the indexer so that you could actually see that transaction that you have done. So this is demonstrating that all of the networking components and the infrastructure is there available. It's running behind the scenes. So next thing we need to do is to connect our SDK and our code to it. A couple of commands that you will likely use will be, well, you can always hit sandbox help, and that'll tell you all of the different components that it has available to you. You will often do sandbox status to, well, get the status. What block is it at, and make sure that the node and the infrastructure is running as expected. You can stop it if you want so that it's not running anymore. And then you could just do sandbox up again, and it would restart the network from where the last block was. Oftentimes as a dev, you're going to use the reset. Now what this does is it wipes away the network, and then it restarts it from scratch, from the genesis. So when you have a testing framework, oftentimes what you are doing is deploying and testing a script, and then you may always want it to be the same application ID, so then you would redeploy it, make some changes, redeploy it, so you would want to reset your sandbox there. It's very fast because it doesn't have to download anything anymore. It just has to wipe the config and start it again. So those are the commands. There are a few other ones, and you can use sandbox help to learn more about those. The documentation for that is on GitHub, and there was a link already earlier. All right, so we've covered that first part there of our developer components. Let's move on to the SDKs. And again, we have these 4 different SDKs available: Python, JavaScript, Java, and Go, that are provided by the Algorand engineering team. These are frequently updated, and these SDKs match the features and functionality that are available on mainnet. So if we think about what has just been talked about yesterday, and we're talking about box storage, we're talking about the ABI, we're talking about BRF, all of those things that have just been released into mainnet are now available in these SDKs, so you can use those in those languages. We also have SDKs available in other languages that are maintained by our community that follow on shortly after the features are released to mainnet. All right, well, let's take a look at where you can find this. You can use our developer portal, so that is developer.algorand.org. and you can click on the button for the SDKs. Choose whichever one you identify with to get it installed, and then I just want to remind you, just go back here, at the bottom, right there you can see that it says the community supported SDKs as well are there, and we have those available in C#, Swift, Rust, and a handful of others. All right. Here's what it looks like to install it. It's quite easy. If you have Node installed on your environment already, you can use npm install algo SDK, and we know that you already have your Python installed, so you can simply use pip to install it using pip install py-algorand SDK. All right, so now you've got your SDK installed. So the last part of the developer environment components is the language and the framework piece here. So first one that we're going to talk about now is PyTeal, and this is a language binding for Teal. And we want you to use read the docs here, so you can go to pyteal.readthedocs.org and learn all about it, how the language works, and what the syntax is for it as well. And this specifically, PyTeal, will be covered in an upcoming session here later this morning. So how do you get it installed? Quite simply, pip install PyTeal. And what does it look like? What does the syntax for PyTeal look like? Well, PyTeal is about writing expressions that are organized into abstract syntax trees. We feel that this is much more approachable for new developers as opposed to writing Teal, which is an assembly-like language. So as you see here, your program code will later on be compiled into Teal, and you can use the SDKs to make, sign, and send transactions after you have created them and your Algorand smart contract code. So it's not terribly easy to see right there. That's a little small, but a bunch of expressions. We'll see that in an upcoming one. We'll be able to zoom in on that. Importantly, pyteal.readthedocs.org for what it looks like. All right, and then the last piece that I want to take us to is something new, is the Beaker framework. And Beaker has been developed by Ben, one of my colleagues here on the DevRel team, Barnji, yeah, in the house, right here. So meet the dev, definitely. And again, Barnji is on Discord, what seems like all the time. And if you got questions about this, you can reach out to him. All right, so Beaker is a Python framework for building Algorand smart contracts. It gives syntactic sugar, maybe we'll say, to how we can write PyTeal as well. So what does it look like? I'm sorry, first of all, how do we install it? Well, guess what? Pip install Beaker-PyTeal. And do note that you could start here with this, and it will, as a prerequisite, install PyTeal for you as well. So here you are. You've got it installed. What does it look like? Well, it looks like this. The nice part about this is it's really focused on making the developer experience easier from a syntactical standpoint. So first you're going to create a class to represent, in this example, a calculator application, and then you're going to see that you have that you're defining methods for each of the various calculator functions in there. It talks about you are providing the input types and also the return types for each of those functions. You're adding a decorator to make them external. That this then says that these should be prepped to use the ARC4 specification for our application binary interface. All of these little acronyms you're going to learn about in the upcoming session as well, but trust me, this is making it way, way easier for developers to take the smart contract code, make functions available, and then turn them outwards so that clients could then come and interface with your smart contracts. Beaker's super helpful for that. All right, so let's see here. Did I miss anything on that one? Yeah, all right, getting started. All right, so what I want you then to do is to now test your development environment. So I've got a nice repo here in on GitHub. It is the organization name for us is Algorand repos there with lots of great code samples here. This one in particular, in here we've got a whole bunch of scripts that help you generate accounts, to test your environment straight away. It goes Sandbox, getting everything turned on. As you go down a little bit farther, you'll see about, there are some Python scripts in here that are numbered. So the first one here is about account generation, right? So you see the code and what it takes to use the Python SDK in order to generate a brand new account. Every time you run this, it does. There's no value in them, but they now are able for you to then use later on in your code to send some value. What else do we have in here? We've got the clients. Yeah, you got to know about connecting your client then, or connecting your code then to the infrastructure that's running in Sandbox, right? So here's the code for connecting on port 4001 to the AlgoD node. And they're similar for connecting to your wallet to the KMD interface on port 4002. Let's see here, then this is the primitive for all transactions that you're going to do using the SDKs. You are always going to build an unsigned transaction. You are going to then sign that transaction, and then you are going to submit that transaction to the network. And then you're going to wait for its response so that you know that it was actually committed, and then take some actions thereafter. So all of this is covered in this Getting Started guide available on that GitHub repo. All right, so we've covered it all. We have got you all the way through setting up your development environment here. But wait, we have also an additional way that you can choose to set up your development environment that takes all three of those components and sticks them into one, and this is called Reach. And Reach is also a Dockerized development environment here that takes everything, puts it together. A little bit later, yes. A little bit later on on this stage here, we are going to hear from the founder and CTO, Jay McCarthy. He's going to introduce you in much more detail to what is Reach, how to reach, and then later on this afternoon, we are going to hear from Mr. J.P. Miller, and he is going to build an application using Reach. So I'm going to cover the basics in terms of getting Reach set up for you here today, and I will leave it to them to actually show you more of the how, all right? So where do you go? First thing that you do to get installed is head over to reach.sh, and they have great documentation for showing you how to install it on the platform of your choice. All right, Windows, Linux, or Mac OS, doesn't matter. So what you do is simply execute the installer script and then make sure that it's running. Here's what it looks like. One thing to note, that you will need to install make, because Reach uses make inside of that Ubuntu or Bash environment. So make sure that you do that. We're going to make a new directory here specifically for Reach, and we're going to then pull it down and then execute it so that it's running. You can ensure that it is running by simply issuing the command reach version, and it'll give you a response back that says it's good. And then you are ready to reach run and build your code. All right, so we'll see a little bit more about that. So great tool there, Reach. What does it look like? The syntax for Reach. This is a JavaScript language. So if you are a JavaScript or TypeScript dev, this will look very familiar to you. And basically, like this is showing we've got two different participants here, Alice and Bob. We can see that they want to get some data and put some data. So this really allows you to focus on your business logic. It's a high-level language that abstracts away all of the complexities of writing smart contract code. You're building both the back-end code and the front-end testing harness simultaneously. And then when you generate your code, when you say reach run, it runs through a formal verification process and really helps mitigate, almost eliminate common errors that are found within smart contract development, because the compiler itself will tell you, hey, you missed this, go and change this so that you aren't going to introduce bugs into your code. Very helpful when it comes time for getting your code audited prior to deployment. All right, that's a little bit about that. Let's move along now into how do we connect, right? Where do we want you as an AlgoDev, now that you've got it set up, where do we want you to go? And that is the developer portal. Okay, so here it is again, it's developer.algorand.org. Here we have it organized across the top into build, learn, connect, and in there, most importantly, go into the connect part and connect with us on our Discord server. Our Discord server is discord.gg/Algorand. That's where all the DevRel are at. They're essentially there around the clock because we are globally distributed and there to help you. So you can get the link here. There's all sorts of great content under Learn. We've got articles coming out all the time provided by the community who are showing people how to build various solutions. Our team, as we are putting out new features, are putting out articles that talk about, well, what is box storage? How would I use it? What is an oracle? How do I make a beacon? So all of these different things are always updated on the dev portal. Make sure you connect with us there. The other thing, we've got something new on the dev portal, which are challenges. And these challenges are a lot of fun where they allow you to prove what you have learned over time and be rewarded with an NFT to demonstrate the knowledge. All right, so you can come in and it is a browser-based IDE where you select your language first. You want to do it in Python or JavaScript. It brings up a little IDE within the window itself. You go through the boilerplate code that we have there, and you update the code to answer the challenge. And when you then execute that code, it is evaluated, and if you did it successfully, congratulations, you will get yourself an NFT to demonstrate that. Then you can show off to everybody, like, look what I have done. I am a true AlgoDev. So check out the dev portal and the challenges there. And now, if you want to know about all of the code that you have seen today in this presentation, it is all right here. So show me the code, hit that QR code. That'll be a link to this presentation so that you can go back and review, get all the other links, and do it yourself. Do the play-at-home game. All right, well, thank you all very much for being here again, and I want to make sure that you do connect with me and the AlgoDevs group on Twitter. I've got time for some questions, so if anybody has anything here, let me know right here in the front. So we'll wait for the mic, and that way we can get everybody to hear.
Thank you. I was always curious when connecting to, let's say, Algo Explorer indexer or the node. You don't need a token. You need a token when connecting to the Sandbox. Is there a reason for the difference?
You're right. There is a lot of reverb up here. Something about the indexer and why is?
When connecting to Algo Explorer, the AlgoD that they provide,
yes,
you don't need a token.
Okay, so
the HTTP header, and you need that for Sandbox.
Okay, so I think the question has to do with Sandbox. Sandbox provides an AlgoD node, and when we looked at the code that was in here to connect the client, it requires that you give it the localhost and the port number, and it also requires that you give it a token. So Sandbox by default makes that 32 A's. So it's the same token for everybody. Now, is that getting to your question? Yes. Okay, so other API providers, we have other API providers in the ecosystem that are providing public nodes that you could connect to for the public networks, obviously, and some do not require you to provide an API key where they're just free to use. Others do require you to provide an API key. What an API key is really is a security measure so that you can know who is connecting to you, because that would be data that you could either choose to give to an individual. It's 32 bytes, so there's plenty of randomness that can be generated within there. For the Sandbox environment, again, we are making it the same for everybody. So we do require it by default here, and if you are using an external API provider, it would be up to them what they're providing. More questions? Anybody?
Hi, I have a question.
Great.
So I wanted, if you're providing the same API for everybody, what about governmental organizations, specifically if they have their own implementations on security? So which part of all the APIs that you're providing would be responsible for that, and how can we learn about it?
Yeah, I totally didn't hear any of that.
Okay, let me speak. This is better. So if we want to change the form of security within your sandbox to work for external organizations, governmental organizations, how can we use it? Which part of these APIs would be the most appropriate to address, and how can we learn more about it?
So you want to change the
Security mechanism.
change the security model of the sandbox. Okay, so the recommended use for Sandbox is for a local private developer environment, and the configuration files for Sandbox would allow you to change the default to any other 32-byte value that you would want to provide in there. That would then ensure that nobody else could connect on the default one. If you are connecting to a public network, well, I guess importantly, Sandbox is running within a Dockerized environment. So the external attack vector surface is really limited to that. It's only running on your machine, and it would not poke holes externally through your router to go outside. I think your attack vector is quite minimized with Sandbox.
But if we want to deploy it on a network or a set of nodes, and we want it to be on not a personal dev area, but more of a distributed system or network.
So Sandbox allows you to connect to public networks that Algorand already provides. So BetaNet, TestNet, and MainNet are the public networks that you would be able to connect to.
What if we have a private network?
If you have a what? I'm sorry?
Private network. For
Yes, the private network as well, and that would be just using dev. So when in the example I had said, you use the command sandbox up dev, you could also use the command sandbox up testnet or betanet or mainnet, and then it would connect to those various networks that way. Do you have any other questions? All right, again, my team here on the DevRel team are in the house, so if you have difficulties in setting up your developer environment, please reach out to us. We are sitting around, maybe hands in the air, where are we at? Ben, Steve, Chris, Pranjal back there, and Joe also there. All right, great, we're all here. And then joining us online in the Americas, we also have Everett, Russ, and our boss, Jason. So thanks everybody for the time today, and